want Detroit sports talk done right? Yeah! If you want it, you got it. It's Detroit sports talk with attitude. It's the Knee Jerks with Eno and Big Al.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like at this time to introduce to you one of the finest running backs in the United States of America, and our number one pick, Barry Sanders.
Here's Isaiah. Let's see what we got. All the way up. Go!
We might not be in your car or on your transistor radio, but we're bringing you the best of Detroit sports past, present, and future. It's time for the Knee Jerks with two guys who know Detroit sports. Here's Greg Eno and Al Beaton.
It's March 22nd, 2022. It's March Madness, and also it's March Madness on the Knee Jerks, Detroit Sports Talk of Eno and Big Al. Best segue I could come up with on short notice. Anyway, I am longtime Detroit-based podcaster and blogger Al Beaton. I'm the Big Al of the equation. Joining me, as always, is Greg Eno. The man knows a lot of things about a lot of things. And also, I hear is very clumsy on ladders, as I've seen the scars. So, Greg, how's things? Now that we know that you didn't break your neck, so...
Well, first of all, if we do the show every other week, so you've had 2 weeks to come up with something. So don't give me this short notice stuff. But,
yeah.
Al's referring to a tumble I took off a ladder that I shared with him just before the show, and I'm okay. I didn't hit my head, which wouldn't have mattered if I had hit my head. But,
yeah. What's the old Dizzy Dean said? They took X-rays of my head and found nothing. Yeah.
Found nothing. Right. Oh, gosh. I am Greg, for my WordPress Out of Bounds blog. Check me out there. I pretty much have a piece up every Monday or Tuesday. This one was about the Pistons and how I think they're on the right track despite their gloomy record. So check that out, please. Follow me on Twitter at Greg Eno and follow the Knee Jerks on Twitter at the Knee Jerks. Some not surprising news, but some pleasant news about the upcoming guests, Al. We're going to be bringing in a couple of really fun people the next couple of shows. On April the 5th, we're looking to bring in Matt the Diesel Derry. Yep. A lot of folks know Matt Derry from his work on Detroit Sports Radio and for the Pistons.
Yeah, he's big in podcasting now.
He's called the U of D games. Yep. I gave Matt one of his first jobs calling U of D games when I was program director at Barton Cablevision back in the mid-'90s when he was just a wee lad.
Yes.
And now Matt is doing great guns, and so he'll be with us on April the 5th. And then on April the 19th, in our pre-NFL draft show, we will be because I think when is the draft? It's like the 20 or late April, early May.
I think early May, to be honest with you.
Okay, as long as it's not before the 19th. Because on the 19th, we're having an old blast from the past, and this guy has become pretty popular on Twitter, Mike Shoddy. Mike Shoddy is an old-time Knee Jerks guest from the early days. I mean, he was like almost from the get-go. We would have Shoddy on talking usually about the NFL. And Mike that's kind of where his niche is, and he's incredibly popular on Twitter. Follow him at Shoddy, SCHOTTEY. He's got like 20 or 30,000 followers on Twitter.
Yeah, he because I know he's been around the block and then some, because he was a pundit for Bleacher Report back in the day when they were actually paying people to write for them. Yeah.
Who wasn't?
Yeah.
I know I was.
Yeah.
Shoddy is he's going to be talking to us on the 19th about the upcoming NFL draft.
And the draft is the end of the month, end of April.
Good.
Right. So.
And Mike will be here talking about the draft and what he thinks about that. That's kind of his bailiwick, and he's a big time football guy. He's coached at college level too. Yeah. In addition to all the writing he's done, and
I anticipate learning things with talking.
Yes. So I'm really looking forward to that because I haven't. I reached out to him just on a whim on Twitter. I said, hey, would you come on the show again? He said, absolutely. And so Derry says he'd be happy to be on as well. So that's coming up on April 5th, Matt Derry, April 19th, Mike Shoddy. So good news there. Al, I know we got lots to get into. We've got, of course, baseball. We've got all the quarterback carousel in the NFL.
Oh, to say the least.
We've got Red Wings activity at the trade deadline, and we've got whatever else we want to come up with. But before we do any of that stuff, we're going to play a game we like to call Whose Birthday Is It, Maestro?
We baked you a birthday cake. If you get a tummy ache and you moan and groan and woe, don't Don't forget we told you so. Happy birthday! Happy birthday!
Everybody knows how we play this game by now. I give Al a clue or two or three of an individual whose birthday it is in the world of sports. And if Al can correctly guess that person within the first two clues, he'll win Rock'em Sock'em Robots.
Oh, yeah. I'll put it. Yeah. How about the second place is maybe if I get it, if I don't get it, how about the game of Mousetrap?
Yeah.
or remember those games where you had to hit the Trouble, where you had to hit the little button in the middle? Pop-O-Matic. Yeah. That's it. All right. But Rock'em Sock'em Robots.
Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's like the pinnacle of our toys of our childhood.
I used to love that sound that it would make when you hit in the jaw. Whatever it was. Knock my block off. No, that was a commercial. This person, Al, made his name. He was born on this date in 1952, so he's 70 today. He made his name in all sports. This is kind of a tricky one. He made his name in all sports, really every one of them, but not as an athlete and not as a coach. I will tell you that. He is very well known in his line of work and spent almost 40 years with a single network in their sports department. He's won 28 Emmys.
Huh. All right. So, obviously a broadcaster. Huh. So, he said he turned 70?
Yep.
I'll try Al Michaels.
Good guess.
Yeah.
But no, Al's a little older, but that's a good guess.
Yeah. It's because he's been in the news lately because there's talks that he's supposed to sign up Amazon to do the Thursday night game.
Yeah. How does that going to work? So you have to have an Amazon account, of course, to watch the game, right?
But yeah, I've heard that you have to have either Prime or I think they put the games on Twitch as well for the kids that know what the Twitch is like. So.
Right. So, but if you have a smart TV, you can watch it on Amazon Prime, right? Yeah.
Because I've actually checked it out because I know they've done the all-female broadcast crew in the past on their Thursday night game. So, but I guess I'll have to put my thinking toque back on for question 2. But as Greg said, we have a lot to talk about. It was quite a handful putting together the show notes today because I didn't even put in the notes anything about the NCAA tournament. Not that there's a heck of a lot to talk about. Unless you want to talk about Michigan and Michigan State, that always ends into an argument about people. And I hear enough of that on sports talk radio as it is. But there's plenty going on in the NFL, Major League Baseball, and the Red Wings at the trade deadline. So shall we start with the NFL, Greg? But that seems to be the kind of crazy right now, especially when it comes to the quarterback carousel and what's going on in Cleveland. But as I said in the last podcast I started with, the last weeks have been more proof that the NFL is a QB first, last, and always league. Well, you might as well just say that part 2, because when we last talked, Greg, I believe we had the Russell Wilson trade had gone down, where the Broncos got sent a crap ton of draft capital to Seattle. And Aaron Rodgers had signed that massive contract extension with the Packers. Since then, Matthew Stafford and Kirk Cousins both signed extensions. I think they're both over $35 million a year, and actually Stafford gave him a bit of a hometown discount, considering he's already. I think I read somewhere that by the time Stafford's career is done, he will have contract-wise, he will have signed contracts for about $500 million. Which is absolutely bonkers. Also, the Steelers are replacing Ben Roethlisberger, at least as of right now, with Mitch Trubisky, who we've had plenty of experience with watching him with the Bears. And then things really got kind of crazy. There was a lot of mudslinging, a lot of teams essentially kneecapping their quarterback's value with talk. The Colts traded Carson Wentz to the Washington Commanders for 3 draft picks, and they shit-talked Wentz on the way out the door, essentially saying, at least leaking to the media, that he was extremely disliked in Indy, was not liked by the front office, was not liked in the locker room, and essentially was a toxic presence. But the Washington is so quarterback desperate, had been for several years. They took a flyer on Wentz because, at least early on in Philadelphia, he was a pretty solid quarterback. So to replace Wentz, the Colts traded for Matt Ryan from the long-time Falcons starter who won an MVP in their Super Bowl season. He's, I believe, 36 at this point, but as the Falcons declined around him, so did his numbers. But I think he's still got a few years left in him. And the Colts are one of those teams you can legitimately say they are a quarterback away from making noise in the playoffs, and Ryan would hopefully do that for them. That meant now that Atlanta needed a quarterback, and they were supposedly into the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes for quite a while, till they lost out on that. So they are replacing Ryan with Marcus Mariota, now essentially a bridge quarterback. And is there anything I've forgotten at this point, other than obviously we'll get into the Browns, Deshaun Watson, Baker Mayfield drama, to say the very least. But all of a sudden, it's kind of weird, Greg, when you look at the lines and say, my God, they're stable. And a lot of these guys who are moving around, you could pretty much say are kind of on the level of, or maybe worse than Jared Goff. Even for, there's still a lot of talk that the Lions are going to take a quarterback in the draft, and we can get into that. But it just goes to show that there are 32 teams in the NFL. There are not 32 quality starting quarterbacks, though. And just watching the carousel turn at such crazy amount of speed with such bonkers amounts of money being thrown around, it really drives home the fact that you have to have a quarterback, a good quarterback, if you want to make any kind of noise in the league. Even we don't even know what's going on in San Francisco with Jimmy Garoppolo, who had a bad year, yet somehow the Niners made it to the NFC Championship game because they're still, I believe, Carolina's talking about needing a quarterback. The Niners don't know what they're going to do with Garoppolo. I believe Seattle doesn't really have anybody just yet. So it's been absolutely bonkers over these past 2 weeks, Greg, watching the musical chairs at the quarterback position, and for a lot of these guys, it just feels like maybe, I wouldn't say moving deck chairs around the Titanic, but it just feels like you got 6 of one in Carson Wentz, but then you got a half a dozen another in a guy like Marcus Mariota. But people are hoping for a change of scenery or maybe being new weapons around them to actually maybe reach the next level. But it's been absolutely crazy seeing what's going on at the quarterback position.
Well, I think part of it might be related to the fact that there's no clear stud quarterback coming out in the draft.
That's a good point.
Nobody that you can really circle as being, this is definitely a first-round guy, or this is definitely a top 5 guy, or whatever. There really isn't a guy like that. I know Malik Willis is kind of thought of in that way by some, but certainly not a consensus kind of a guy. And so I think what teams are seeing is, especially with Matt Stafford going over to the Rams and doing his thing, and Tom Brady still around.
Oh yeah, actually, the other one I forgot to bring up is Brady came out of retirement after 2 weeks.
Right. Aaron Rodgers, age 38, and so forth, getting the big money. I think teams are just realizing that there's the 30 is the new 25 when it comes to, or maybe what I should say is 35 is the new 30 when it comes to quarterbacks. Yeah. Matt Ryan is now a youngster. A lot of these guys that are moving around are not youngsters. They've all been around, for quite some time. Excuse me. And, the Russell, you mentioned, even if you didn't mention the Russell Wilson thing, I'll mention it again. Russell Wilson, of course, he's 33. There's a lot of guys kicking around out there who are part of this carousel who are on the wrong side of 30. And I think what they're seeing that the league is built to protect quarterbacks, of course. It's built for the passing game. It's no longer, 3 yards in a cloud of dust. The year of the runner, or the age of the runner is long gone.
Right.
Having running backs is almost kind of like a luxury. It's kind of like an afterthought now. Yeah. And so it's all about the guy under center. And not that it never has always been that, but even more so now. And quarterbacks are protected like no other player, so they can play longer. And these guys are such good athletes, and they keep themselves in such good condition that, gone are the days of the Billy Kilmers and Sonny Jurgensens with the beer bellies at age 35 running around out there. I mean, these guys are in supreme condition, and because of the rules protecting them, they don't get beat up like quarterbacks did of even the 80s or 90s. So they can play longer. And, so it's no longer a matter of teams are no longer put off by the age of these guys.
Mm-hmm.
When you got guys like Matt Ryan, getting traded around, I mean, and he'll go, of course, he'll immediately step in.
He is much like Stafford, he's considered the best quarterback in the Falcons' history. And I think they only got like a third-round pick for him. Right. Yeah. And
that might be a nod to his age.
Yeah.
And the fact that, they may see, I don't know that the team that the Colts would even really have even considered getting him anything more than a third round, giving up more than a third round draft pick for somebody like Ryan. But he's still a capable guy. I mean, you can win with Matt Ryan. I mean, he's not.
Yeah, I think so too. I agree.
By any stretch of the imagination, but I think that's a fair. Don't forget Baker Mayfield, who we don't know where he's going to.
Yeah, we'll get into that in a little bit.
Yeah,
but that's funny how you bring up a guy like Sonny Jurgensen or Bobby Lane. They kept their throwing arms in shape by doing 12-ounce curls for the most part. That's just things how things have changed at the position. But you make a good point about the running game, how the game has changed where running backs are essentially fungible. It's almost you don't want to waste. You don't want. I shouldn't say. Yeah, I guess that's what it is now. You don't want to waste a first-round pick on a running back who is likely going to be used up physically by the end of his first contract. Because if you're giving a running back that second contract, where that's where the really big money's at, he's got to be an all-world kind of guy, because most running backs, they're used up at the age of, as my phone goes off, they're used up by the time they're 26, 27 years old, which is a big difference from what the offenses we saw growing up, with Billy Simmons, Barry Sanders here in Detroit, for example, where, they made the quarterbacks better. Now at this point, it's the quarterbacks you hope to make that sixth round or undrafted free agent running back good. It's the other way around now. The big example is that. Look at Saquon Barkley in New York with the Giants. He was second overall pick. He hasn't done. He has done nothing to help the Giants' fortune, and he has really not done much to help. Was it Daniel Jones there in New York to make him a better quarterback? That's how much the game has changed. That it really is it's stacked. Against the defense, and it's stacked. It's leaning right towards having a good quarterback if you want a good offense. And I can understand why the Lions are kind of staying out of this for the most part. I'm hoping that what we saw of Jared Goff over the last 4 or 5 games of the season will carry over. That he seemed to gel with Dan Campbell's play calling and how the passing game did take off somewhat. And hopefully they will make some more moves for wide receivers in the draft. They did sign one in free agency. We'll get into that as well. But I guess it's just you're right. It's a combination of things between rules changes and how they've neutered defenses. Quarterbacks are staying in far better shape at a far older age. The money is just so good for these guys. Why would they not want to stay in the game? I mean, look what the Lions gave their backup quarterback, Tim Boyle. $2 million. And what has he really done? All Boyle really has is a rifle arm, and he's yet be able to harness it. Yet the Lions are seeing something, and to keep another team from poaching him, they put him under contract for $2.5 million, for example. So I guess if there's one position in sports, Greg, that has an absolutely outsized effect on wins and losses in a particular game, it's really come down to quarterback, and how the NFL is now treating that position reflects that fact.
Well, it's all about the air game, and no longer is the run used to set up the pass. I think you made mention of that as well.
I hate when people say that. It's not like that anymore.
Right, exactly. Right. But you know what? It's what the fans want. I mean, the fans enjoy that. They enjoy, and you can because the flip side of that, Al, is when your quarterback does not throw long or does not what they call stretch the field or whatever term you want to use, fans get frustrated. I mean, one of the knocks.
Yeah, like the first 3 months of the Lions season, essentially.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
The knock on Goff coming out of the gate, and when Anthony Lynn was the offensive coordinator, was, geez, where's the downfield passing game? Now, of course, the Lions didn't have. We're not blessed with a bunch of all-pro receivers. I understand that, but that just goes to show you that the frustration level that fans get with the dinking and the dunking,
right.
The West Coast offense kind of a thing. That's not what fans want. They want to see the ball aired out. They want to see the two highest paid positions in the game are quarterback and receiver.
Yeah,
I mean which makes sense. If you're going to pay all these quarterbacks and you're going to pay these receivers to catch the balls, and the Lions, once they kind of got the wide receiving thing kind of figured out with the emergence of Amon-Ra St. Brown and with the emergence of Josh Reynolds when they acquired him and that kind of a thing. Yeah, I mean, things got better and things got a little bit more exciting, and now they've signed DJ Chark, and now they're excited about that, and that's what gets the fans going. You make way more, you get way more hay when you sign receivers and trade for quarterbacks or draft quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. It used to be in the old days when you and I were first starting to watch pro football. If you got a really stud running back, that was Dorsett and Franco Harris and Earl Campbell and Walter Payton and all these guys. I mean, that was exciting. Billy Sims, that was exciting stuff. Yeah. Because that was the way the game was. Yeah. And a lot of the quarterbacks now that took teams to the Super Bowl were nowhere near even Pro Bowl caliber quarterbacks in some regard, in some instances, because they had a ground game and a big time defense to kind of help them along. Now, no way. No, you cannot go to a Super Bowl or much less win it with a fair to middling guy. I don't think you can. I mean, maybe it's still possible that you could.
I think that's the outlier. It's no longer the rule.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, because go back and look at the numbers of, say, Terry Bradshaw, and then look at the numbers that Franco Harris was putting up, and who was his running mate there in the backfield in Pittsburgh? Rocky Blair. Rocky Blair. A couple of 1,000-yard rushers in the backfield. That's the sort of thing you'll never see anymore.
Well, look at the Dolphins. They had 3.
Yeah.
They had 3.
Yeah, that's right. They did. That was it. Jim Kick, Larry Zonka, and Mercury Morris. That's right. Yeah, you'll never see that again. If anything, you'll see 3,000-yard receivers out of the backfield before you'll see 3,000-yard rushers out of the backfield anymore. But yeah, it's the game has changed, priorities have changed, players have changed, and that's the other thing, especially back then, when you're talking about the running game. You'd see guys get 300, 350 carries in a season,
right?
And that anymore, I think you would consider that abuse on a running back.
I mean,
I know there's a stat going around. I'd have to look it up. Where I think the actual tipping point for ruining a running back's career was a 370 carry season. If a guy was pushing that amount of carries in a season, which was not uncommon in, say, the 70s and 80s and even into the 90s, their career would immediately start to decline because they had taken so much abuse. And that's the other thing you got to remember with these running backs is it's kind of talking about how the offense has changed. These guys have been getting hit more than likely since Pop Warner. They've likely been running backs the majority of their life. And then when they get to high school and college, they are more often than not workhorses, bell cows, and who get the majority of the carries. And then the same thing happens with, as they move on through the levels. These guys have taken a massive amount of abuse by the time they've hit the NFL. So it's understandable that by the time these guys are 26, 27 years old, when back in the day they would be they would be getting their big contract. Like remember what Le'Veon Bell was looking for. It's just not there anymore because teams have realized is that if there is one position in football that's not worth investing big money in, and it's the running back. I mean, look at Le'Veon Bell. He finally did get some of that money, but he was never the same running back either. Then after he left Pittsburgh, his skill started to decline. And he's still bouncing around the league, but he's not nearly the running back he was even 4 years ago. So, yeah, it's fascinating to see how things have changed from when we watched the game as kids to how the game looks today, where it's, as you mentioned, you could win with a mediocre quarterback as long as you had elite other parts of the game. Now that is an outlier. No, like when Denver won the Super Bowl with a mediocre Peyton Manning at the end of his career, they had an elite, top-of-the-line defense. But when you see what the Super Bowls look like recently, champions recently, they've all had elite quarterbacks for the most part. From Stafford to Mahomes to Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, whomever, name it. These are all guys you would love to have under center who are probably bound for the Hall of Fame one way or another. So, but it's
not to say but it's also not to say that that a good running attack is not valuable. Of course,
but it's not worth putting a lot of money into. I put the money in the line, put it in the line, not the running back.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you can still command a game and dominate a game on the ground in certain instances, or at least maybe kill the clock in a game when you get the ball back with 4, 5, 6 minutes to go, and break the other team's will by just running the ball down their throat. You can still do that, but the thing is that the window, Al, for these guys anymore, these running backs, when they're at their peak, if you will, it's like 3 years, maybe three.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
And then after that,
right when they get into the league until that contract ends. So 3-4 years. That probably. Yeah, look at like Christian McCaffrey. What has Carolina done with him? What has the Giants done with Barkley? It's right. You can even make Tennessee's had a dominant running game, but they've never been able to get over the hump. And maybe you could say it's because they have Ryan Tannehill under center. So it's. I guess before we get too far derailed into the weeds on this, we do need to talk about what's going on in Cleveland, since we're talking about quarterbacks. And the Browns decided to go all in after winning a bidding war with, apparently, I believe the Falcons were one of the teams. I think there's talk the Colts might have been on it, on a bidding war on an alleged, quote-unquote, sex offender, Deshaun Watson. The Browns ultimately won the bidding war. They sent 3 first-round picks, a third-round pick, and a fourth-round pick to the Texans for, I believe he's a 3-time Pro Bowl quarterback, Deshaun Watson. Watson's worst year is as good as Baker Mayfield's best year, essentially. He is a definite upgrade over Baker Mayfield. But the issue is Watson has 22 outstanding civil suits involving sexual misconduct and or assault with various sports masseuses. Even though I think 1 or 2 of these cases did go to the grand jury, and they declined to indict him. This really smells like the O.J. Simpson situation, where he was found not guilty in court, but the civil suits are just going to rake him over the coals, obviously because the level of proof is not needed as high. And I think when there's 22 accusations, and there may be even more than this when it's all said and done, this is the also 1 or 2 you could believe might be false. 22, I have a hard time believing that this is some sort of conspiracy to take money from Deshaun Watson. I think he's at the very least guilty of gross sexual misconduct. And honestly, I would not want him on my team. But the Browns supposedly did their research. They even put out a small press release saying as much. And then the Browns also gave Watson a 5-year, $230 million, fully guaranteed contract. This is despite Watson has sat out all of last season because of these allegations and the fact that he'll likely be suspended by the NFL going into this year. So we don't even know when he'll be able to take the field. The contract, worth noting, Greg, is that it's heavily backloaded. With year 1, this year, is having a massive $44 million signing bonus, but a league minimum $1 million salary in anticipation of a suspension. Because this now lowers the salary cap hit from like $46 to $50 million to $10 million this year. They're really gaming the system. Right. Ultimately, the remaining 4 years of the deal is $46 million a year guaranteed, of a cap hit of about $55 million. And we'll get into the Baker Mayfield stuff, because that is actually crazy as well, how this has been handled. But I would. It's been interesting I don't know if you've seen this on social media. I know I have in certain parts. Like if you go into Reddit and go into like the Lions subreddit, and it's being flooded with Browns fans wanting to. They say we just can't support this. We can't support the team we've rooted for our entire lives having, just doing something like this to give not only sign but heavily reward a man who is honestly a piece of shit. And the other thing is, how would you like to be a woman who is either a Browns fan or who works with the Browns, and all of a sudden Deshaun Watson is now working for the team, playing for the team? I mean, the Cleveland Rape Crisis Center actually released a statement about how they were against this and are hearing from people and are taking donations from people who are completely against what the Browns have done. I know people do say, Greg, that all will be forgiven if the Browns win a lot of games and win playoff games, go to a Super Bowl, whatever. But if this were the Lions, I would really think about renouncing my fandom of the team. I mean, obviously, yes, there's bad people in sports. We all know that. But this is fucking egregious. I mean, this is awful. And seeing what the Browns have done here, all in the name of winning, it kind of left me at words. And not the fact that they traded for him, the fact that they gave him $230 million guaranteed on top of all this. It's like, it's. I really don't have words to say just how despicable it is.
Well, I happen to know a couple of Browns fans on Facebook. They're friends of mine, and they reacted much the same way that you did, which is very, very disappointed at the very least. Yeah. Just not at all on board with this whole thing. The Haslams, by the way, Jimmy Haslam and I think it's his wife, are not well regarded anyway in around Browns. The Browns fan base. They're vilified much like the Fords are. Right. And the statement that the Haslams released that you referenced a little while ago was just an absolute joke. I mean, basically it was like, well, we talked to him and he seems like a nice young man and he's going to be fine from now on. And of course they got roasted on Twitter, and all the Twitter people said, did you bother to talk to the 22 women that accused him when you did this? And that's like, and their lawyer said no, they did not. Yes, he confirmed that. Of course not. Yeah. I don't know. The Baker Mayfield thing, and I frankly, I'm neutral on until now. I'm neutral on Baker Mayfield. I really don't. I told my friend on Facebook, I said, I don't think Mayfield was very good against the Lions last year. He said, no, he wasn't. I said, they won that game because of Nick Chubb. And he said, yeah. I said, but Baker Mayfield has never done anything to embarrass the city of Cleveland. I mean, maybe he doesn't win as many games as
and he played injured last year as well.
But he's never done anything to besmirch the city or to embarrass the city.
If anything, he's been a positive. Just look at all the TV commercials the guy's been doing. Put a positive spin on the team.
And he seems like a good guy, and it's too bad that all this, and plus not only that, Al, but it was clumsy in the sense that that Watson initially was not going to come to Cleveland. Right. They made the overture to him. And that alone sparked a lot of outrage. And then it looked like it was going to die down when Watson said, well, I'm not going to waive my no trade. And then he did an about face and waived the no trade. And now Cleveland took him. And now they've got this. I just would ask you, there's only one team out that can win, of course, win the Super Bowl. Right. And the odds already are against you. And even, I mean, is the pursuit of the Super Bowl worth all of the PR backlash and all of the turning of the backs on the Browns by, you mentioned some the women's groups, advocacy groups, and the rape centers and the whole 9 yards. I mean, and you mentioned, what about the women who even work for the team, even in administrative offices, for God's sake. Right. So if Jimmy Haslam is ever able to grasp that Vince Lombardi trophy one day on the podium after the Browns win the whole thing, will it have all been worth it? Will he look back on, I mean, how much damage by that time will have been done to the franchise? Well, how much outrage? How much spinning will they have to do? PR spinning. How much will they have to try to win back certain segments of the fan base? How much, on and on and on. And that's if they win it. If this whole thing ends up being like the rest of the Browns' history, which is much like the Lions, which is never getting there, then what?
Yeah.
I mean, now you've got a big PR thing on your hands, and you've not accomplished your goal. It's either a huge, at best, it's a risky gambit. At best, that's sugarcoating. That's sugarcoating it. At worst, it's like you said, an egregious, and I know that this pearl clutching, everybody wants to win. All the fans of every NFL team wants to win. That's true. But hopefully there's some sort of a bridge too far when it comes to that. In the pursuit of the almighty trophy at the end of the year, hopefully has some sort of limits as to what you'll do to get there. And and of course you've got the innocent until proven guilty crowd, which that always drives me crazy. When you've got 22 women that are essentially saying the same thing. And then you've got these other folks on it's innocent until proven guilty. Well, there's smoke, there's fire. Yeah. And when there's this much smoke, there's fire, as far as I'm concerned. This is fire, this is not smoke. And I don't care that he hasn't. The only reason he's innocent until proven guilty is he hasn't gone to trial yet. Something's going to go to trial here. You're not going to have 22 women make these accusations, and they're all going to get shut up with money or with plea deals. Sooner or later, this kid's going to go to court for this and go on trial. And the Browns, the thing is, Al, I don't know if Haslam understands this. He's now attached the entire – when you're an owner of a sports team, and I can't remember who said it, you're a steward, essentially. Yeah. Even if you have that franchise in your family for years and years and decades, you are still ultimately a steward of that franchise. I don't know if Haslam understands that by doing this, he has now attached the entire Browns legacy, going all the way back to Paul Brown, to this guy, Watson. And everything that Watson goes through from a legal standpoint, and not even from a legal standpoint, just from a court of public opinion standpoint, he's going to drag the Browns through that mud with him. It's not like the Browns are right above this, and it's the Browns up here and Deshaun Watson down here in the mud. No, the Browns are going to be dragged through that mud. Every single court appearance that this kid makes, every interview he gives and tries to denounce or renounce these accusations, and every time this whole thing is brought up, which will be constantly, of course, they're going to be dragging the Browns. This story is going to drag the Browns right through the mud with him. And I don't know if Haslam understands that. I mean, you would think that he would, but I think he seems to think there's a
I would think he doesn't care.
Well, it could be that. Yeah. It could be that, which is, of course, awful. Of course. In a way, I kind of the silver lining to all this is that maybe we'll see finally now and you mentioned the Twitter reaction and my friend's reaction. Maybe we'll start to see and the subreddit thing. Maybe we'll start to see now some restoration of faith in humanity. That people will it sounds like people are coming out against this right from the get-go. Yeah. Now, granted, it's easy to come out against it in March. Browns start out the season 8-2. Maybe some of that stuff will die down, but it's really too bad that this and the money is just unbelievable, outrageous. Usually I'm all for giving guys money in pro sports, but this is just, like you said, a slap in the face of any female. Period. Not just the accusers.
Right. Yeah, and that's the thing that there's talk that signing bonus with the low salary in first year that is going to be used to attempt to buy off all the accusers and get them all settled. Boy. Get the 22 of them to settle, and because he's got $44 million in a signing bonus now. But when it comes to about Brown's ownership not caring, I would put it this way: you don't become a billionaire unless you do some very morally sketchy things, or you're able to set aside your morals or your compassion and do things that hurt people to make money, be it either by, we've seen how, these guys make their money by buying businesses, loading them with debt, selling things off, getting out of it, and then watching everything collapse with all the employees being left to hold the bag and without jobs, things like that. And these guys, I think, don't have that kind of. I think the best thing ever, one of the more correct things I ever heard is called to become a billionaire. You got to be a sociopath. You can't have feelings. You can't care about what other people think. You can't have compassion. It's to make that kind of money, you have to do things that I think a lot of people would find anywhere from uncomfortable to unreasonable to outright evil, if you know what I'm saying. So I'm thinking these guys are like, I'm going to win. I don't care if that means I got to take a guy I find morally repugnant if he's going to put a W on the board, which is an awful way to think, but we've seen it time and time again in sports and in business that people will do this kind of thing. But it's. I don't know. It's just.
That reminds me. There's a scene in Jerry Maguire.
Yeah.
There's a scene in Jerry Maguire, and it's quick because it's part of a montage of to kind of set the stage for what kind of a character Jerry Maguire is. And there's a brief scene of this gigantic. I'm guessing. Well, he's a football player. Gigantic man being hauled in handcuffs somewhere with a bunch of media taking pictures, and Jerry Maguire says something like, all these accusations are false, but I just want to say one thing: this man is a hell of a football player.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, and that's what gets me, because I've heard there was one specific talk show host here in Detroit saying that the Lions should have been in on the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes. Is he completely forgetting the owner of the team's a woman? That was the first thing that came to mind when Mike Valenti is trying to make this case. And then you're saying a team that is owned by a woman wants to trade for a man who is essentially it may not be. This is essentially a sexual abuser. Seriously, you think she would go for that? That's just how dumb some of the takes are around this thing. I mean, it's common sense. The guy shouldn't even be in the game right now until this is completely figured out, settled, innocent, whatever. But and I would hope that most teams would be so desperate to do this. But obviously, Cleveland, who was often tied in with the Lions as the dregs of the league and never been to a Super Bowl, blah blah blah, they are willing to leave those morals at the door and go for a really despicable human being, and it's awful. It really is. And let's not even go into this. Even got to talk with Baker Mayfield. When this was all going down, when they were just talking about the trade, Cleveland, it was leaked to the media. It was being reported that the Browns wanted an adult as their QB. That was the quote. They wanted an adult. And if they look at Deshaun Watson, you're calling him an adult? And obviously, so Baker Mayfield taking a high role, he didn't say much until then the trade talks broke down, and Mayfield said, I want to trade. I want out. Yeah, obviously, you guys don't believe me. I want to be gone. The Browns said almost immediately, 15 minutes after he asked for a trade, they released the media. No, we're not going to trade you. And then the trade happens, and the Browns now need to trade Baker Mayfield because they can't keep his contract on the books. And they have absolutely no leverage. Why would you trade for Baker Mayfield right now? Because ultimately, the Browns are going to be forced to either make a shitty trade or release him. So why would you give he's probably worth at least a second-round draft pick at the very least, you would think. A guy who's won a playoff game, is still pretty young. Yet the Browns were so stupid in how they handled this. They slandered their quarterback before they traded him. Now his value is almost nil. The whole league knows that they have absolutely no leverage in trade talks. The Browns have painted themselves into a corner going all in with Watson and trying to wipe their hands of Mayfield. And people should say, you don't slander the guy till after you trade him. That's when you leak out all the bad stuff. But the Browns are they handled this. You could not have handled this in a worse way than the Browns have. They absolutely butchered this from the beginning. Let alone from signing a serial sexual abuser to kneecapping the value of their current quarterback. They're absolutely idiots in Cleveland. I can't believe that. And I'm thinking, and these people are billionaires because they sure as hell don't know how to run a football team.
Well, and that's why I said that they're not thought of very highly in Cleveland by the fan base. They've been around he and his wife have owned the team for about 10 years now. Yeah. And it has, and of course, the Browns, like I said, I always kind of put their legacy next to the Lions because they're both similar franchises in the sense that they're both Midwestern. They both are by Lake Erie. They both were great teams of the 50s and parts of the 60s, but not really since then, have never been to a Super Bowl and so forth. Mm-hmm. And, so I always looked at those two franchises' histories as being kind of parallel to each other. Yeah. Although the Browns have had more winning seasons probably in the Super Bowl era than the Lions have, but not by much. And so this owner, Haslam, is not exactly, you mentioned the Lions. Now, even if Bill Ford were alive and he was the owner, he wouldn't have done this either. No. I know what you're saying about definitely not.
Well, I think that's also the difference between old money and new money, because the worst you could say about William Clay Ford is that he was a fail son. His dad was an evil son bitch. He was brilliant, but he was also anti-Semitic, and he was also a Nazi sympathizer, amongst other things. He was also a union breaker. We're talking about Henry Ford. Right. Of course. At the worst you could say about about William Clay Ford is that he was just the fail son. He was never very successful within the company, and essentially he took the Lions were his thing. That he bought them, and essentially that's what he did. He just sat on the board of directors as a figurehead at Ford because he was never very successful in business. But some of these new owners, like you're talking about, like Haslam here, they're newer money. They made the money with all sorts of devious and evil and morally ambiguous ways, and so I don't think they would think twice about doing it. You're right. I agree. William Clay Ford would never go for something like this, and and obviously I don't think any of the Fords would. But obviously some of these other guys, could you see Tom Gore's doing it? Yeah, because he's a completely different animal because he's new money compared to like an old money Ford's. At least that's kind of where I'm leaning on this. You mentioned,
I know you've said this more than once. You've said it several times actually in various shows about people who have that kind of money usually have to do some pretty awful things in order to get that money. Now you look at, I don't mean to, I'm not trying to drag Tom Gore's name through the mud, but you brought him up. And you mentioned the new money thing. You can't tell me that Tom Gore's at his age, and he's younger than we are. Yeah. You cannot tell me that he has not, if you look at just the nature of the business of what Platinum Equity does, just that is, I'm not going to say it's a shady business necessarily, but it's got shady people in it. Yeah. In their line of work. Doesn't mean that he's shady necessarily, but it probably means that he's an example, what you were referencing, that of doing some pretty crappy things to get ahead. To at least, at the very least.
I mean, he's involved in the prison profit, the prisons for profit business because he's involved with. He owns a phone company that charges ridiculous amounts of money for prisoners to make phone calls, for example. That we all know how cheap a phone call is. Yet in prison they charge these guys, like $20 a minute. That's the business he's in. That's one of the businesses he's in. And you're right. Platinum Equity is essentially a company that buys companies, strips them to the bone, loads them with debt, and then bails. That's how he made his money. He's essentially Gordon Gekko in Wall Street. Right. That's exactly what he does. He looks like this fun-loving drunk guy when you see him at Pistons games. But business-wise, you want nothing to do with that man because he will tear you limb from limb.
Yeah, these are guys that buy. You mentioned it. You hit the nail on the head. They treat other businesses and companies and the people within them as pawns on a chessboard.
Yeah,
and that's all it is. And yeah, I guess somebody has to do it. I guess it's legal.
Yeah.
It is legal. But all I'm saying is that that's not the kind. It's not this. With the Ilitch. Okay, you look at Mike Ilitch, and that's an example of the old money you're referring to.
Right.
This is a guy, Tom Monahan, same thing. Yeah. Two guys who got involved in pizza.
Yeah.
Well, you can't get much more wholesome than opening up a pizza shop.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you can't get much more wholesome than making money off of your pizza businesses and growing your empire, if you will.
Right.
By getting involved in, he owned of course the slow pitch softball thing. He sponsored a ton of youth teams. All very wholesome stuff. But we're talking about a guy who made his money starting I think he opened his first pizza shop in Garden City in the 50s.
Right.
He made all his money in the 60s, and then started getting involved in sports in the 70s.
Yeah.
And that's different.
Yeah, and you can say Ilitch is no angel by any means, but compared to what somebody, because you can make the argument, why the downtown Detroit was such a shithole for so long? Because Ilitch bought up a ton of property and then didn't do a thing with it until he had enough to where he could bulldoze it all and build stadiums. That's one of the things that I should say, maybe not Mike Ilitch, but his company did, for example. But there is a difference because Ilitch made the money on his own, and for the most part, he just made it the old-fashioned way, by a franchisee. By hard. You could make the argument Mike Ilitch made his money with hard work for the most part, and then. But then again, though, he didn't treat his sports teams like businesses, for example. He treated them. How you mentioned that they're not really owners; they're more guardians. They're just shepherding the ship for a while, so the next people come along, and it's the people's team more than anything else. Mike Ilitch, I think, showed that when he finally realized that, it takes money you have to spend money to win games, and he finally did it with the Wings and the Tigers, and that's what made him beloved. It wasn't his pizzas, is that he actually spent money on his teams and wasn't afraid to run at best break even on his teams, because that's what always got me. And Mike Ilitch was not afraid to lose money if that meant winning lots and lots of games, and he did that with both the Wings and the and the Tigers. And that's when now that I see his son, which we'll kind of get into a little bit when we talk about the Carlos Correa thing with the Twins, who he looks like he's doing the bare minimum to make it look like he's doing something. Because even with the signings that the Tigers have made, they still have a below league average payroll right now. But anyway, before we even get off track on that, we're really going off on billionaires right now.
Right.
I guess in the end, I'm glad I'm not a Browns fan. And that's the thing, though. I've been to several Browns games. Like I said, I had friends in Cleveland as well. I went to the old Mistake on the Lake a bunch of times for Monday Night Football games, and that place was a hell of a good time. I've been to Indians games. I've been to Browns games. It's a nice city. It's very Detroit-like, and I feel the pain of those fans for having a shitty owner who, and I think what's even worse though that you're starting to see some Browns fans who are starting to do the mental gymnastics of, well, he's not guilty in a court of law. No, I need to see more proof that. Read up on this. If you read up on this, Sports Illustrated did a long dive into this. And if you read the Sports Illustrated piece on this, you'll think even worse of Watson than you did if you just know the surface stuff here. He's an awful, awful human being. The owners of the Browns are awful, awful human beings. The NFL, you know what, Greg? I guess I know we talk about this quite a bit, but it really feels like when I watch the NFL, I kind of have to take my morals or my conscience and shove it in my back pocket. And put all these bad things away so I can actually enjoy the games themselves. Between what we're seeing of Watson, between the concussion issues, between guys' careers could end just like that with an injury, most of these guys aren't making guaranteed money and are essentially treated like meat. I really question my fandom at times, that I'm able to able to take my my feelings about all this evil shit that the NFL is involved with, and yet enjoy the games on Sunday. And I probably makes me a bad person as well when it comes down to it. That I'm actually, you could say, even though I'm not a Browns fan, I am still part of the NFL industrial complex by still watching games on Sundays. I guess I'm at the point or the age now, Greg, where I know I can't change things. I could stop watching and wouldn't change a goddamn thing. So I just kind of have to hope that the Lions are better than the Browns when it comes to making decisions like this, because I'm going to watch the games.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, hey, you can't throw out the baby with the bathwater either. I mean, that's you can't do that either. But I mean, you say what you will with the Lions, and believe me, we
said a lot.
but this is definitely something in all honesty, I can't see them ever doing. I don't care who the owner was, male or female. I just really feel bad for all the women, and not just the women, Al, who are accusing Watson of this, but all women who have accused anyone of this, number one, and all women in general, frankly. But the women who are, every time it looks like they may get some sort of justice or some sort of closure or satisfaction, whatever you want to call it, it seems like they're playing whack-a-mole. Like they hit that one and there's another one that pops up, and it sets them right. It just knocks them back, back again. And they haven't made any, one step forward, two steps backward.
Yeah.
And that's who I feel for is, you look at these guys and I feel, ashamed as a fellow pro football fan of some of the apologists for Watson who I see on social media. Although I have to say that there's far more anti-Watson people than there are pro-Watson people.
Right.
But there's always going to be those idiots out there that are going to stick up for a guy like that. And whether it's because of misogyny or whatever, or just because they're a jerk, one of the two. But, we have gone on, I know we've gone on a lot about this, but I'm glad that there's been the backlash, and not just from women. There's been a lot of backlash from people like you and me, male fans and allies and so forth. So.
Right, exactly. So it's, oh my goodness. Well, before we move on from the NFL, we should at least touch on the Lions, because it was free agency opened up while we were between the shows. And the Lions essentially are getting the band back together. And that the Lions re-signed almost all of their pending free agents, including defensive end Charles Harris, safety Tracy Walker. Those are probably the two big returning signees. Most of the rest of them, when they signed all the role players and backups and bodies, essentially, they were all re-signed except for a couple. I think the one who didn't return, who I think I would have wanted to see return, was Jalen Reeves-Maben, the linebacker. He went to the Texans. But I guess the question is, Greg, is it a good idea to bring back the majority of what was a 3-win roster? And I see some fans going, yeah, continuity. There has got to be an area between let's bring everybody back and let's go nuts in free agency. And there's got to be a little happy medium there of let's improve the team. We don't have to bring everybody back from a team that was bad, but the Lions seem to be insistent that they're going to make their big splashes building through the draft. They only made one large splashy move in free agency, and as you mentioned earlier, they signed an injury-prone wide receiver in DJ Chark from the Jaguars, but he is a former Pro Bowler. But his issue is he has trouble staying healthy, and so thus he was given a reasonable 1-year, $10 million fully guaranteed deal. But this where it comes. This kind of like the argument of nature versus nurture. When it comes to football, do you believe in bringing in more talent and getting rid of the old guys, or developing the guys you have and developing chemistry and improvement from within? And it looks like the Lions are going with the chemistry and improvement and from within, the old coach them up philosophy, is I guess the way to put it. We'll see if it actually works, but I would have liked to seen a little more being a little more proactive at free agency, but I can also I kind of in the middle here. I can understand why they didn't spend a ton of money in free agency, because they still have a lot of money tied up with Goff at quarterback. We don't know what direction they're going to go there. But again, I'm not going to celebrate bringing back majority of a three-win team either. A three-win team either. I don't understand people being thrilled about that either. The Lions right now are in a rebuild, and you would think that there would be more turnover than we're actually seeing in the roster right now.
Well, I think what you're seeing is just how hated Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia were.
Yeah.
Because the sentiment that you're seeing right now, this in Brad Holmes we trust, in Dan Campbell we trust, is strong. I mean, the fans have.
I think fans are going a little overboard with it, but that's how fans are.
Well, I agree. Well, that's true. But they have completely embraced this regime, if you will, and they've completely embraced this notion that indeed this is a rebuild. Yes. Mm-hmm. And they are embracing what you said, this coach 'em up mentality of keeping the culture. You know, how many times have you heard the word culture? Culture.
Yeah, I hate that term.
And
really
the camaraderie and so forth. And it's true that the team was better in the second half of the season. That's for sure, no question about it. It's also true that true rebuilds do require some continuity. I mean, you do want to have a group of young players developing with each other, and that is also part of a successful rebuild. Yeah. And of course, the coup de grace is the hitting your draft picks, developing, getting a quarterback. I mean, all those other things that truly matter. Mm-hmm. And I guess the fans seem to think that the Lions are doing it the right way. I've never seen the Lions fans be this united in their optimism as I have ever. Maybe I mean certainly not in the social media age. I've never seen this kind of banding together, and I just think it really speaks to how much they just completely hated the Quinn-Tricia era, and they're willing to give Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell that rope now to give them that slack. And I think that's what we're seeing right now. Now, eventually, there's going to have to be, some improvement in the win-loss area, and there's going to have to be a decision made about quarterback. That's true. But for now, it's a honeymoon that just keeps going. I mean, this started really when Campbell was named the coach.
This started with the kneecap speech. This is when it started. Yeah,
and it just there was some anti-Campbell stuff in the first part of the year. I saw a lot of this guy's a clown. He sold sold Sheila Ford half a bill of goods. And
we touched on some of those that we weren't too impressed by him in the first half of the year at all. We really weren't. He did change minds a little bit in the second half, but I still think the jury should still be out. And yet we have a fan base here that thinks this team is Super Bowl bound. It's just a matter of time. And I find that of thought kind of hard to believe myself.
You know what? I was one of them. I remember I told you I thought they were going to go 0-17, and I really did.
Yeah, you did. I was saying 5 wins. You said, no, they're not going to win anything.
Right. And but I think what happened. I think another part of this optimism, which seems to be, at first blush, they seem to be fool's gold, is that the division is not very good. Other than the Packers,
right.
it's the Packers and everybody else. The Lions, the Vikings, and the Bears, none of them are good, really. I mean, they're not really. I mean, none of those teams are really very good. So I think that the fans look at the division and say, if we can just, and now that Devontae Adams has moved on, he's not in Green Bay anymore.
Right.
And the Packers don't really have any. I know they win a lot of regular season games, but they don't win playoff games anymore. I think the fans are looking at, Aaron Rodgers is 38, and I know he signed up for boatload of money. But I think the fans are seeing that maybe in a couple of years this division could be theirs if they could. When I say theirs, the Lions, if they could get that guy under center. That's I think is what that's the decision that Brad Holmes You know, he made and here's the other thing too. Brad Holmes has really kind of made he's made more good moves than he has bad. I'll give him that. Not keeping Galladay is looking like a huge prescient move on his part. When you look at what Galladay did in the Giants, which was nothing. Now he missed on Brashard Perriman, and he missed on a couple other people, but he obviously hit on Amon-Ra St. Brown. Right. He was able to bring I thought the Sewell draft pick was outstanding. I think he was able to get some other guys, in the draft that are okay, but pretty other to be competitors. And he brought back Tracy Walker, which I think was a popular move at safety. I thought that the contract he gave to Chark was there's been no outrageous overpays, that's for sure. No, and he didn't bring in somebody who was his buddy with the Chargers or not the Chargers, the Rams. I think he's I can see why the Lions fans like him. So far. I think there's trust in him, and you haven't seen trust in a Lions front office. And when? Yeah, I don't even know when, because you and I grew up in the Russ Thomas era, and that was followed by the Chuck Schmidt era. Yeah, Chuck. And that was followed by the Matt Millen era, and there really hasn't been any sort of era of front office years where you and I could point to and say those were the years, man, right there. Right. And even when they were making the playoffs in the 90s, you didn't really get the feeling it was because of what the front office did. It was more because of Wayne Fontes, frankly, and his relationship with the players and Barry Sanders. Yep. So that's kind of where it's at, and I just think this is just post Patricia bounce back that Holmes and Campbell are enjoying right now. Now it's not gonna last forever. No. Eventually they're gonna, if they go 3-14 again, they're gonna come under fire, as they should. I don't think that'll happen. I don't think they probably will win 5 or 6 games next year. But that's what we're seeing. It's I think it's more of an anti-Quintricia thing than it is a pro Holmes thing. Although, like I said, Holmes has done some good things. Yeah. I guess I think what we need to remember is for how excited fans seem to be, if we're going by timelines, because football is should not be a long rebuild type league, because we all remember what in Jim Schwartz's 3rd season, he was in the playoffs. Right. After in season 3 after 0-16, the Lions had built a playoff team. Right. So this team was not nearly was bad, but not as bad as that team, as we ultimately found out, even though you thought they were going to be. So you would think that if not by not this year, but by after next year, 2023 season, this team should be in the playoff hunt at the very least. Yeah, especially when you have 4 first-round draft picks over the next 2 drafts. And if you hit on those 4, you should have 4 major building blocks who, unlike the last time the Lions had something like this, when they had Calvin Johnson, Matthew Stafford, and Ndamukong Suh all on monster deals before they had the cap slotting. Yeah. Which screwed up the cap for the Lions, and they couldn't keep them all. If Holmes is able to hit on those 4 draft picks, that'll go a long, long way towards this team becoming a winner. So this draft is a big deal. He cannot screw up in this draft, which is why this draft is so fascinating, because there's no clear. There's no consensus as to who's going to go where in the draft. Right. I've said that Aiden Hutchinson, who was kind of the consensus top guy. I've seen some guys saying he wouldn't be a top 10 guy in some other drafts. So that's just how wide open this one is. So it's going to be fascinating to see where Brad Holmes takes the Lions in this draft, because he cannot screw up this draft. You're going to miss. It happens. Yeah, he just can't miss with his high picks, as he's got so many of them in the next 2 drafts. He can't miss with the top ones. And it's going to be interesting if he sees if one of them ends up being spent on a quarterback or not. We'll have to wait and see. So, anyway, Greg, before we move on to the Tigers and kind of hit the home stretch here, we need to get back to the birthday game. Yes, obviously we've established that he's a broadcaster. He was born on this date in 1952. He's won 28 Emmys. He was the primetime host of 12, I didn't know this, 12 Olympic Games between 1992 and 2016. And if you had to rank his favorite sports, I would think baseball would be the top of the list.
Yeah, it's got to be Bob Costas.
It is Bob Costas, yes. Bob
Costas. It's the Olympics that finally gave it away, because he was like the face of coverage for a long time on NBC.
Right. And he is 70, believe it or not, today. So happy birthday, Bob Costas. He doesn't look a day
over 65, but you know.
I know. He's almost like he's like Dick Clark. He never really ages.
And actually he's had a varied career between hosting talk shows and everything else he's done.
Right.
And always was not afraid to speak his mind as to I'm sure we both remember when he espoused talking about gun control in a pregame once, and people lost their minds for whatever reason. But it's say what you will about Bob Costas, hell of a broadcaster.
Oh yeah,
a good game.
Absolutely. He was. I love listening to Costas call games. Yeah. I thought he was outstanding, really, and he's a smart guy, a real smart guy.
So very.
And he's had a lot to say about baseball and in ways that they can improve. He tries to come up with different ways they can do the playoffs and everything.
He hated the wild card and expanding playoffs. I know that for sure.
Yeah, right.
Which we will now get into after I make room for the Rock'em Sock'em Robots. But
that's right. Congratulations.
Yes, all right. But there will be baseball. I know when we last spoke, Greg, the CBA negotiations were not going very well. But since then, after threat of a second week of games being canceled, the MLB and MLBPA kind of locked themselves down and finally hammered out an agreement. That would happen on March 10th. Spring training was up and running by the 13th. Opening day will now be April 7th, so they only essentially lost a week of the season. It will remain 162 games. The canceled first week will be made up. First week of games, I should say, will be made up throughout the season with either when they both have open days in the schedule or with double headers. The immediate changes, though, there are quite a few, at least when it comes to rule changes, because I'm not going to get bogged down in the financial stuff. At least we'll have baseball, and if the players are happy with it, then we should be happy with the settlement. But the immediate changes, there will be a universal DH. Finally, I always thought that there's a DH at every freaking level of baseball except the National League. Well, that has changed. I mean, even overseas they have a DH, but now the DH is universal in Major League Baseball. They did expand the playoffs like we discussed. It's now 12 teams, and at least they got rid of the one-game wild card. It's now a best of three. I did find this interesting. No game 163 anymore. They will have predetermined formula when it comes to tiebreakers. So I wonder if the Tigers would have won the tiebreaker when they lost game 163, thinking back on that. Oh, my God, that game was a heartbreaker. There will be no more 7-inning twin bills. They got rid of the short doubleheaders. But they did announce today, actually tonight, right before the podcast started, the extra innings ghost runner will return. So be anticipating no more long extra inning games. If an extra inning game goes past 11 or 12 innings, it's going to be an outlier. No, because games will end quick with putting a guy in second. And also, there is now the Ohtani rule. A pitcher who is batting in the lineup must remain as the DH once his pitching outing ends. The other rule changes we had discussed in the past, Greg, the pitch clock, larger bases, banning of the shift, they likely will not go into effect until next season. So we'll have baseball. The season's compressed slightly, but the owners got what they wanted. Expanded playoffs, more TV money, more teams in contention for the playoffs, which means more money. So, again, that's what it always came down to, the owners being able to make more money. And most of these rules I'm not upset about. We knew the expanded playoffs were coming because it's happened in every league. The wild card round being expanded is a good thing. So a one game play-in, that's a coin flip. Let's get rid of that altogether. For all the people crying about the ghost runner, it doesn't bother me that much. I mean, I between you and me, I don't miss 19-inning games. But that's choice. That's taste more than anything else. But most of these rules I really don't have many issues with for the most part, even with the ones that will go into effect next year. I think the one I have an issue with is the shift, just because I've always been of the idea that they put the shift on you, hit around it, figure out a way to beat it. But they decided that they don't want to do that anymore. So other than that, though, we're going to have baseball in, about 2.5 weeks. So, yay. I'm looking forward to it because the Tigers should have, at the very least, a 500 team this year. But I'm just glad it's settled. And for the most part, the players seem happy with what they got from the owners. So I guess we can't ask for more than that.
When it comes to the ghost runner, I don't like those long games either. But why couldn't they consider putting a ghost runner on first base?
Yeah.
Why does it have to start in scoring position? If you put a ghost runner on first base, to me that kind of opens up a little bit of a Pandora's box about what is the offensive manager going to do? Is he going to put on a hit and run? Is he going to bunt? Is he going to steal? Depending on who the ghost runner is. Is he going to? It just opens up a little bit more cat and mouse, a little bit more. The two managers in the opposing.
But I think managers don't want that strategy. I think managers don't want to be called out on that. I think they're more like, less decisions I have to make, the better.
Yeah. Well, I didn't think of it that way because this is not a manager thing. This is a players versus owners thing. The managers aren't even in the equation.
No, yeah, I know that. But when it comes down to it during games, I'm sure managers are like, I'd rather have them in second. I don't want to be called out for calling on a bunt. That kind of thing.
Yeah, I guess obviously I wasn't looking at that at all. That aspect.
But yeah, I see where you're coming from there. But this again was part of the agreement where essentially the players said if the owners want to make a change, they're pretty much free and able to do it now. So. This is coming from owners because I think it comes down to decisions like this with trying to shorten the game by not having long extra inning games that'll blow out your bullpen. Yeah. This is a way of managing your assets because it's a lot easier to manage your bullpen and to not get guys' arms hurt. But because we didn't have an extra inning game that went to the 19th inning, and then we got to play the next day at 1:00 in the afternoon, kind of thing. Yeah. I think that's what owners are seeing with this. So I think again, this adds up to they're not seeing the gameplay; they are seeing players as assets that need to be protected.
Yeah, no, there's definitely some weight to be put there. Yeah. I'm kind of glad though that they did away with the 7-inning doubleheaders.
It's not like when we were kids where doubleheaders were a normal thing anyway.
Right.
Right. So
now because of the fact that they did start late, they're going to start about a week, 7-8 days late. Are they going to have to indeed roll some doubleheaders in throughout the year?
They will definitely. Okay. There will be some doubleheaders.
Okay.
Pretty much has to be because what are the odds of these teams going to, like the Tigers in Seattle, having the same days off? It's going to be hard.
It would be nice if in a show of respect or a show of acknowledgement to the fans, if at least for this year only, if they did away with the day-night doubleheaders and just allowed fans to see two games.
If they made you commissioner, right?
Really. Couldn't they just say, look, we're going to just give you guys, being the fans, we're going to just say, like the old days, you buy one ticket, you see both games.
Yep.
We're not going to play one at 1:00, clear the stadium, and bring in a new set of fans at 7. Let's just have back-to-back games. You pay one price, you see both games. That would be a nice. I remember when I know that this lockout. As far as games missed, wasn't very long. I understand that it could have been, but it wasn't. When the NHL missed, that whole year, they came back and every rink had, I think, thank you fans or something painted on it. Okay, and I'm sure they probably did some other little goodies for the fans as well. Well, I understand this is not that. Nothing really that much was lost here, but. The fact that they put the fans through the potential of there being a lot of lost games, wouldn't it be nice if they just tossed him a bone and said, look, you know what? The second game's on us this year. You want to come to the ballpark and bring your family. You want to pay $20 to park. You can pay $20 and park and see 2 games. Right. You can pay one price and see 2 games. I mean, wouldn't that be kind of a nice thing to do?
Yeah.
A little nod to the fans, toss them a bone. You know, I don't know how many people would take advantage of that. I really don't. But just offering that up and saying, look, we're not going to have day-night doubleheaders. Yeah. I think would be a really good public relations move that they'll never make.
Yeah, because it'll cost them money. That's the only reason they invented the day-night doubleheader, because they gave them another gate. But yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, you would think that it would be great for public relations, but again, if a lot of these new money owners, it's not. It could give a shit about public relations. It's all about the bottom line. But at least we've got baseball. At least now we'll have baseball to talk about for the next 6 months. So, yay! I'm happy about that. At least because the Tigers should be at least, if not a playoff team, they should at least be a competitive team this year. And we do need to add. They did make a couple more moves after the lockout. A couple okay moves in that they picked up a lefty reliever, Andrew Chafin, to a 2-year, $13 million deal. He's a solid guy. I believe he's got a career ERA of about 3.3-ish right now. He's mid-threes. 31 years old, had a 1.83 ERA with a career-high 5 saves and 64 strikeouts and 71 appearances in 2021, which were split between the Cubs and the Athletics. And then they also signed what looks like going to be their 5th starter. For what it's worth, it looks like Chafin's going to be like their 7th or 8th inning guy. But for the rotation, they added a bottom of the order guy, probably going to be the 5th starter, 33-year-old right-hander Michael Pineda, who I'm sure we're all familiar with from his days with the Twins. They signed him to a $5.5 million contract, 2.5 in incentives. He had a 3.62 ERA, 21 walks, 88 Ks across 109 innings with the Twinkies in 22 games. I think 21 were starts. Solid guy, career ERA under 4. The risk with Pineda is his inability to stay healthy, which is why he is so cheap. He's only had 2 seasons with more than 170 innings pitched, and the last time he did that was in 2016. These are both signings I have no issues with, even though I think Pineda is going to be a bigger risk just because of the health, but Chafin's going to slot right into the back end of that bullpen, which would be really, really nice. But I have a feeling Pineda is more just insurance for the young guys. So they got 3 young pitchers that they want to build this rotation around. But the odds are there's going to be injuries, there's going to be issues, there's going to be ineffectiveness from whomever. So they picked up a journeyman. I won't call him an innings eater because he doesn't eat innings, but a journeyman guy with good stuff who wins. He doesn't have a fastball anymore, but the guy's known for having pinpoint location. You can do a lot worse than him as your 5th starter, I guess is the best way to put it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
yeah.
The Tigers had a very good offseason. I think John Heyman, and say what you will about John Heyman, but I think he's still one of the more respected baseball guys out there. I think he had the Tigers ranked 3rd in terms of which of teams had the best off seasons. He slotted them in a 3rd. Mm-hmm. And they addressed all of their needs. Really, mm-hmm. They didn't burden themselves with lengthy, horrific contracts.
Right.
They didn't. I don't think really overpaid for anybody.
All market rate value. You're right about that.
Yeah, I mean, right. I mean, I don't think there was any one move that you could look at and say, "Well, gee, that was stupid," or they overpaid there. I think that they did a really good job when it comes to addressing what they needed and getting it, and not breaking the bank in order to do it. And Chafin, that was a really good move. I mean, I know that relievers can be volatile and they can be.
Yep. We're long on record as that you cannot predict relievers.
But this guy, I think he's got a track record. He's done it. He's got a little bit of a resume. You mentioned Pineda. He's the same way. I mean, when the starter, they needed another starter. Now they have the luxury of, if they want to start if somebody gets hurt in the rotation, they can slot I'm guessing Tyler Alexander.
That would probably be the plan. They'll move him from being a swing man. Yeah.
Right. And that's okay. That's fine. So I mean, I don't know if there's any one movie. I know that the Al Avila haters are still trying to paint this Correa versus Baez thing as the Tigers lost and they missed out because, geez, look what Correa signed for with the Twins, and the Tigers played it fine. They played it fine. They got their guy early. They didn't have to worry about it. They didn't have to worry throughout the entire lockout. What are we going to do with our shortstop scenario? They knew it. It was done before December. Done. Move on to other things. And they didn't overpay, I don't think. I know you were higher on Correa than Baez, but they didn't overpay, and I don't think they did. And they enabled them now to. There was one less thing to worry about, so they could concentrate on getting a Pineda and a Chafin and do those kinds of things. And I think they did fine. I really do.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting that the Twins got Correa. It's a 1 year deal. It was signed as a 3-year, $105 million deal with average annual value of $35.1 million, the most forever for an infielder. But realistically, with it having an opt out every year, no, he's got 2 opt outs and the contract ends. It's a rolling 1 year deal. And if he has the same kind of year with the Twins that he had last year with the Astros, he's going right back into free agency.
This is
essentially a 1 year deal.
Absolutely.
So and you could argue that Detroit's deal with Baez is a 2 year deal because that's when the opt out is. And if Baez plays well, he's taking that opt out, no ifs, ands, or buts.
But you know what, though? But here's the thing, Al. To me, the Tigers are better equipped and are closer, are a better team than the Twins. I mean, I'm just going to say it. I think they're better than the Twins after what happened in the offseason. In 2 years, you mentioned that Baez opt-out thing. But in 2 years, though, I think the Tigers will be in better shape to retain him because I think they'll be winning at that point. And I think at that point they'll be willing to, I think that they could keep him from opting out. I'm not so sure about the Twins with Correa. I mean, he seems too big for Minnesota to me. He seems too big for Minnesota. I mean, I that's just my opinion.
It's like he stopped at a rest area. This is where I'm going to stop for a year. That's it.
If I'm a fan of a team, and my team signs this shiny new guy, but I find out he's got an opt out after 1 year. Now, some of these opt outs, that's the new thing now is opt outs, and now they're opting out after 1 year.
Yeah,
I may as well just say, well, I'm opt out at July 15th. I mean, it's just these opt outs after 1 year. If I'm a fan of the Twins and I see my team sign Correa and I'm excited, and then they tell me, oh, by the way, he can opt out after, in about 6 months. I'll be like, well, that's not as exciting now.
And that brings up the other thing. What if Correa is having a great year, and if he's having a great year, he's going to opt out. If you're the Twins, why wouldn't you trade him? Because he's gone.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the other thing.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. I mean, he becomes big-time trade deadline fodder now.
Yeah. Even if you're having a decent year, he's going to walk. You trade him anyway, which is not good for the fans.
I know, but, I agree with that. The problem with that theory, though, if you're the Twins, is I've always been of the opinion that when other teams know that you're on the hook for something, and you're kind of not desperate to trade a guy, but it behooves you.
Oh, it's the Baker Mayfield thing all over again.
It's other teams.
Yeah, but I know what you're saying. Yeah, the Twins won't have a lot of leverage. You're right.
That's why I've said this a million times on this program. When you trade guys at the deadline, like there was talk last year, should the Tigers re-sign, or I should say extend, or trade Scope?
Scope, yeah.
And I said, well, what are you going to get if you decide to trade him? What are you going to get for him? Because whenever you're trading a guy to be like a 2-month rental for another, because those guys never re-sign with their team. When they get traded as a rental, they never re-sign with that team. They always go back on the free agent market. If I'm got a guy and I'm calling up other GMs asking for interest in this guy, and I know that I'm trading them in essentially a 2-month rental, what am I expected to get back for that?
Yeah.
What would I expect the team to give me, knowing that the guy that I'm trading to them is going to be gone in 13 weeks? What is that? What is that? What do I expect to get?
Yeah, when you see fans say, well, trading for prospects, you're going to get shitty prospects.
Yeah, I'm not going to get their
no, you're going to get like their number 25 guy in the system. Yeah. You're not getting a number 5 guy.
If you think there's any chance at all of inking him, hold on to him.
Yeah.
Now, Correa, I don't see his marriage with the Twins as being a long-term one. I just don't see it.
No.
The Twins, because the Twins historically have not been a team that goes out there and grabs expensive players. They just haven't done it, and that's one of the reasons why.
No, you're right. They've done it to their own guys, but they're rarely gone out of the system.
Yeah, they've paid guys like Mauer and guys of that ilk.
Yep.
But for the most part, they're not players. They don't go out there. They're never buyers.
No.
They're never buyers of the deadline. Even in the years when they were okay, which is like every third year, they're okay every third year.
Yeah.
They never go out there and make a splash.
Yeah, it's yeah. I'm not going to get all too uptight. The Tigers didn't get on Correa because this is obviously he saw the market change after the lockout. The money he wanted wasn't really going to be there, so he said, "Okay, I'll do this for a year, and then I'm going back to free agency." And the Tigers could not have seen this coming. I still think the original offer they made was a lowball, that 10 years, $275. And importantly, supposedly that had 3 opt-outs, which sounds like every 2 years there was an opt-out with that deal that they offered Correa. But still, the 27.5 AAV, they were lowballing them. That was not a serious offer, if you ask me. So, I think Correa is a better player than Baez just because I think he's going to stay better longer. Baez is, his high strikeout, don't walk, low on base percentage thing scares me a lot. But, for the money they're paying him, it's not an albatross at all. And again, it's not my money anyway. But, yeah, I'm not going to get uptight over missing out on Carrera because it's obvious that he still wants that $350 million contract. He just saw it wasn't going to happen this season, so he's just kicking the can down the road a year. So, and the Twins decided, well, let's make a run for 1 year. Him and Gary Sanchez, that'll win you a World Series. So, all right, let's wrap things up by talking a little bit of Red Wings, Greg. Trade deadline was this week. Actually, the trade deadline was yesterday, as a matter of fact. And there was no deadline blockbuster from Steve Yzerman, even though there were some rumors that Tyler Bertuzzi may be on the block, and there was talk that about the Wings' window of contention as to what the ages of Bertuzzi and the likes would be when this team actually gets good. Will Larkin be worth building around when this team is finally good, and he might be pushing 30 at that point. Regardless of all that, Bertuzzi, none of the big names left. The name everybody thought would be traded was traded. That would be defenseman Nick Leddy. Him and Luke Witkowski went to the Blues for a second-round pick and a couple of role players. Oscar Sundqvist and Jake Wallman. One's a third, fourth line center. The other one's a bottom pair defenseman, I should put it that way. Vladislav Nemenstikov went to the Stars for a 4th-round pick. And then the biggest deal of all, Troy Stecher went to the Kings for a 7th-rounder. So,
right.
All this ended up being, Greg, was Yzerman. Because there was, everybody thinks, Steve Yzerman's going to take advantage of somebody with a big blockbuster. But didn't happen this year. All he decided to do was just get himself more draft capital. Obviously, the big one being the 2nd-round pick this year in the Leddy trade. So, would it have killed me if they traded Bertuzzi? No, it wouldn't have bothered me in the least. I mean, I think he's a good player. The team plays. As the Wings go, he goes because he is the kind of player that he's a good, solid. He's a good, solid second-line NHL player, but Is he going to be that player in 3 or 4 years when this team is actually competing for playoffs? I don't know. We'll see if the Wings even bother to extend him. But other than that, this is like, if you weren't going to trade for Bertuzzi, this is essentially what you were going to end up with, and that's what the Wings did. Draft picks.
Yeah. Yzerman works at Yzerman's pace. That's all
he's in no hurry, that's for sure.
that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
There was, I'm sure we seem like we always talk about Jeff Blashill every time we talk about the Red Wings. It's hard not to.
Yeah. You want me to read the quote about Blashill then?
Yeah, we'll do that in a sec. We'll do that in a second. I do want you to do that. But the moves were, he does. It's funny. The other quote he had. This is so funny. I'm going to be paraphrasing because I don't have it in front of me. But he was saying, he says, you know what? People think I'm trying to trick people.
Yeah.
I don't say much. I don't have any hidden agenda. I'm not trying to trick anybody.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to read the quote about Blashill, but I'm not trying to trick anybody. I'm not trying to. I just, this is just the way I work. It was almost kind of apologetic. Like,
that was funny because everybody thought he's not saying anything because he's got something up his sleeve, and he said, "I didn't say anything because I had nothing to say."
It's funny that he finally acknowledged that there's this what's
the running joke? What did they say? If a GM sees Steve Yzerman on the other line, hang up. Yeah.
He's not trying. And that's so. This guy, from the moment he was drafted at 18 years old, from the get-go, that's the way he's been. I've never seen anybody not change at all. Mm-hmm. Maybe Nick Lidstrom, not change at all. From the time he was 18 to the time he's 57, or 56, whatever he is now, as Yzerman. Yeah. He's been the same person for all those years. He hasn't changed one bit. And that's okay. I mean, because what he is, it's good the way he is. But, it's funny that he hasn't – he's the same person, just in a younger body. But he was the same person at 18 in a younger body than he is now.
Right.
So, but this is – hey, he explained it. He said, we had a chance to get Nick Leddy for a second-round pick. Mm-hmm. He helped us out a little bit. He gave some veteran leadership. He helped out Mo Sider, blah, blah, blah. And, we were going to talk about an extension. He wasn't interested. So we got the second rounder back.
Yeah.
No harm, no foul kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And then the other moves, we got a little bit of depth back with the trade for when you got the two players. You got two players. St. Louis.
Yeah, from St. Louis in the Leddy trade, they got a center and a defenseman, both legit NHL players. They're just not. They're role players. They're not impact players. So.
Yeah, I meant that they got the second round pick elsewhere to kind of make up for the. So hey. He gets what he can get, and if sometimes he'll trade a guy like Athanasiou or Mathis, sometimes he won't.
Yep.
Whatever the case may be, and this is just going to go on. This rebuild is just going to go on his pace and nobody else's, and that's just the way it's going to be. But we do have to talk about. I think we have to talk about.
Yeah.
Which I thought you were going to read the quote about.
Yes, about Jeff Blashill. Yeah, because during a press conference, post trade deadline press conference, Yzerman was very non-committal on the status of Blashill. Because when previously, anytime this Blashill's status as head coach has come up, Yzerman was usually fairly supportive. It made it sound like he was not going anywhere. He was happy with how things were going. It was, I don't want to use the term vote of confidence, but he always had a positive spin for Jeff Blashill in his performance. But this time, not so much. Yzerman changed his tone when asked about it this time around. He said, quote, "We're here to talk about the trade deadline and the moves we made. This has been an up and down year for us. We've had a lot of progress. The last 6 weeks of the season have been disappointing for all of us, to say the very least. Jeff and I will sit down at some point and talk about our team and where we're going with our team and what we need to do." So that is definitely not a message of support. That's not a vote of confidence. That's especially over the last 6 to 8 weeks of this team have not been good at all. They've been the defense has been awful. They've been giving up a crap ton of goals. There's been a lot of effort issues. They at times look like they're going through the motions. So it was obvious that Yzerman has some issues and concerns with this team, at least how Blashill is running the team over the past few months, and it's understandable. Sooner or later, Greg, and you've brought this up in the past, is that how often do guys who have lost so many games for so many years, rebuild or not, keep their jobs? Especially a guy who was already here when the new GM came in. So it really sounds like maybe Yzerman has, without saying it, he is saying, I think I have seen enough. We will talk after the season. If I don't hear what I want to hear or I don't see what I want to see, maybe we'll make some changes. At least that's the impression I'm getting from what he's saying here. Or maybe that's what I want to inflect at what he's saying here.
Yeah, I think most people agree with you. I agree with you. I think that while he is a difficult person to read, Yzerman, I think that at the same time, we've all read these kinds of quotes, comments before from different management about different coaches, all in all sports, and they all sound the same. Yeah. When they all kind of have that same. You mentioned non-committal, and usually when you're non-committal, that is a bad thing for the coach. Usually. Now, sometimes there's, they also will tell you that the kiss of death can also be that supposed vote of confidence.
Right.
But usually when you're non-committal like this, and it won't take, and this is why, the extension that he signed Blashill to last year, it was reported by Pierre LeBrun, was only 2 years, so it would run through next season. Right. So it's not going to cost much, and you've mentioned this before, about how one of the reasons why Blashill maybe sticks around is because for what the Red Wings need right now, he comes relatively cheap, and to buy him out now, they don't have to buy him out for 1 year, and I don't know what his salary is because I don't know if it's ever been made public.
I think he is one of the lowest paid coaches in the league. I think that's pretty much been assumed.
Especially for the franchisee coaches. He's not going to. He costs a lot to buy out. That'll be chump change. That's not even an issue at this juncture. The question is going to be, and if you look at Blashill's career arc, and you mentioned, and you're right, I have said many times that usually guys don't last this long, but if you look at his career arc, he kind of fit himself in perfectly. He came in after the Mike Babcock era as kind of the heir apparent. Let's face it. I don't think the Red Wings looked at anybody else other than Blashill when Babcock left. I don't think they even interviewed anybody. I think it was basically an anointment at that point because he was considered, Blashill, the heir apparent to Mike Babcock. He had served on Mike Babcock's staff for a time. He was molding those players in Grand Rapids, and he was the Grand Rapids coach, and Kenny Holland loved him, and so when Babcock left, it was just an anointment.
Yeah.
So then he had a couple of years of that, I don't call it a honeymoon, but kind of a honeymoon, but then the team became old all at once, and they became in a rebuild very quickly. Management didn't want to acknowledge it right away, and so there was this transition period. And so Blashill kind of got some, got off the hook there because it was he kind of looked at it as a transition period. You really can't blame him, blah, blah, blah. Then Yzerman comes in 3 years ago now. And again, Blashill's kind of, he's already here. We're in the throes of this rebuild. There really isn't anything, any real reason now to make a coaching change. Right. So if you look at his career arc, he's kind of been the accidental tourist. He's always been kind of the guy that he just kind of has always been there because the different situations made it okay for him to be there. Now, like you said, I think they finally reached the bridge too far with him, and that it just makes sense now to. And I think this last 6 weeks indeed. I think losing 9-2 or whatever they lost to Winnipeg, not Winnipeg, the crappy team that beat them up, Detroit.
Phoenix?
Who beat them 9-2?
I think it was Phoenix. Arizona, the Coyotes.
Muted, I think.
That's right. The Coyotes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Then they go into Seattle. They lose to Seattle. Those are the kinds of games that can be the nail in the coffin. If you're kind of about a guy and he loses 9-2 at home to Coyotes, and then he can't. Then the team falls apart in the third period against one of the worst teams in the league, and the Kraken.
Yeah.
That's just does not bode well. I mean, you can have an off night in the NHL. That's of course, but those games just stick out to me. And they lost 10-7 to Toronto.
Right. They
were giving up 7-8 goals every night. It seemed like that kind of stuff that's what gets coaches fired. You lose some tough, close games, hard fought. Look at the Pistons. Look how hard they're playing this time of the year right now with their crappy record. They are not an easy out. They don't get blown out anymore. The Red Wings are routinely getting blown out, and that to me that's a sign of a team when you're getting blown out this late in the season that often. That's telling me that maybe the team is tired and they need another guy. I mean that's and I've never really seen anybody ever come out in full-throated support of Jeff Blashill on that roster. They said some polite things, maybe things that they should say. But nobody's really gone full bore and said, this is the guy. Gosh darn it. You see that with the Lions. You see that with the Pistons. And you see with the Tigers.
Yeah.
The players are fully behind their coach. With the Red Wings, it's politeness. It's courteous. If they're behind them, it's out of courtesy. Yeah. It's not really full-throated. I've never heard Dylan Larkin say, I believe in Jeff Blashill. I mean, he's not.
You don't get that. They would run through a wall for him.
Exactly. And you just can't get blown out like that.
Yeah.
You can't be giving up 7, 8, 9 goals in the NHL.
Yeah.
And that frequently, this late in the year, that tells me that's a team that's either quit or is just tired of the guy that's behind the bench.
Yeah. It's I really can't add more to that because you pretty much summed up the Blashill experience at this point. It's like it's run its course. And you make a good point that the main reason he got the job is what he did in Grand Rapids, and he was always considered heir apparent to Blashill. And then, as we've learned, Blashill was a raging asshole. So, it makes you kind of wonder with that it's time. I just put it that way. When we just say it's time. They need a new voice in the locker room. And especially they have some players, especially the top end players who have been around for the entirety of Blashill's tenure, and and anybody who's essentially let me put it this way, a protege of Mike Babcock. And we all know how Babcock turned out, what he turned out to be. It kind of says something about Blashill as well. It's time. Let's move on. Let's get a new head coach in here and have him be the one to take the next step. And speaking of moving on, I think it's time to move on to it's time for the Jerk of the Week. Move on to that. So who's your Jerk of the Week?
This is tangentially about sports. If you want to consider golf a sport, which I think we kind of should. What else do you call it?
It's on TV on Sunday afternoons. It's a sport.
Right, there you go. There's a ball. There's a ball.
There's a ball in a club. There you go.
Right, exactly. I'm going to give my jerk. I'm not sure if you've been if you've been following this fire at Oakland Hills Country Club, which was horrible, obviously. But my jerk of the week is the crew. Yeah. Apparently, this thing started because the crew that was working on a renovation or whatever were using some sort of a blowtorch or something like that, and somebody was careless, and something got lit on fire, and they didn't respond, I guess, the way that they maybe should have responded. They tried to take care of it themselves, which to a degree, I understand that. Yeah. They tried to contain it themselves. There was a gap between when this started and when the dispatch went out for the fire trucks. And those, as you know, when you tell a fire, I mean, seconds are precious, let alone minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And this thing burned, got out of control, was out of control by the time the firefighters arrived. And I know everybody makes mistakes, and I'm sure whoever was the person or people who were responsible, I'm sure they feel horrible about this.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not suggesting that they don't, but I have to give. These are also at the same time, these are professional people. When you're using a tool of that, I mean, believe me, I'm far be it from, I'm not a tool guy, but if you're using something like that, where there's fire involved,
mm-hmm.
a blowtorch, you better be careful.
Yep.
That's all I'm saying. And that thing went up like a tinderbox, apparently. I mean, just went up in flames incredibly fast. They did not respond to it the way they should have. Now, the report is still ongoing. I should say the investigation is still ongoing. But from what we've been told so far, that appears to be the cause. That's what the fire marshal is saying. So we'll see ultimately what happened. But if this is indeed what happened to this 100-year-old, all this memorabilia and everything, because somebody was careless with a blowtorch, that's even doubly. I mean, obviously, it's great that nobody was hurt or killed, obviously. Yeah. But the fact that this sounds really preventable is what I'm trying to get at. Yeah. And not all fires are, but it seems like this one was preventable.
Well, at the least the USGA thinks they'll be repaired by 2034 or whatever it was, because that's when they're getting they got the U.S. Open in 2034 and 2051 or something like that. It was just announced today. But yeah, as someone who uses a torch a lot, you've seen my pictures on Facebook, I'm sure, me walking around with a torch. Those things, those things, you have to be careful with them. And I could not imagine using, especially as you said, that place was a tinderbox. It was all wood. It was ancient. That's, it's just the same. Someone was so damn careless that so much memorabilia was lost in a historic building as well. It's a damn shame. So I'm with you there. That person is definitely the jerk of the week. Right, my jerk of the week. There was a couple ways I was going to go. I could. I was thinking about going with people who talk about their brackets. I don't care about your bracket. No, did you? I got to ask you. Did you do any brackets, Greg?
No, I did not.
I did too, and it took me about a minute. And I don't even remember who I picked to win. That's how much care I took into it. I don't really care. Plus, I was in a couple of non-money brackets. I just did it because of a couple of newsletters that I read, and I was invited to join into their bracket. But I don't talk about it. I don't really care. It's I thought about too many people talk about their brackets, and too many people talk about the mock drafts they do. I don't want to hear it. But I have to go with. Urban Meyer was back in the news again, Greg. I'm sure you know why. The Athletic had a big expose on his reign of terror in Jacksonville. And some of the stories that they came up about how abusive he was, about what a raging asshole he was, and most importantly, how utterly unprepared he was for the NFL game. Just showed that he should never have been hired in the first place. And I think the most laughable story was he didn't know who Aaron Donald was, the best defensive player in the NFL, number 99 of the Rams. I think the quote was, "Who's that number 99 of the Rams? I hear he's supposed to be pretty good." Aaron freaking Donald. He didn't know who he was. And I think what's even worse about this, Greg, it just shows that if he was like this in the NFL, surrounded by adult men making millions of dollars and coaches making millions of dollars and belittling them and being a raging asshole around them, what was he like at Bowling Green, Utah, Florida, and Ohio State, where essentially he was he could be a dictator and do whatever the hell he wanted, especially in small college towns where that stuff is always covered up, and there's a very friendly media, and the guy is considered a deity in Columbus, for example, and it turns out that when he can't be a dictator, when he can't be a raging asshole, he's a horrible coach. So my jerk of the week is is Urban Meyer, and you called us. You said before the season this was going to blow up in the Jaguars' face, and I got to give you kudos to that. And I also got to give kudos for The Athletic for such a fascinating article. And again, The Athletic is well worth paying for because it's awesome because you get to read awesome stuff like this. But yeah, I hope we never hear Urban Meyer as a head coach ever again. The scary part is I would not be surprised if there's a college out there that throws a Brinks truck at him.
Oh, I hope not.
Yeah.
Boy, I hope not. I said on Twitter, I said, boy, I read these horrific things because I read the same thing you did. And I read these horrific stories, and I said, I can only imagine how horrifying this guy was at the college level.
Yep, exactly.
You read some of the stuff. This is stuff that it looks like it's stuff that he just said to the college players, but he's saying it to pros.
Yeah.
There was one point he said, if I cut you, you won't be able to make $15 an hour somewhere else. And people are like, well, does this guy think all I can do is play football? They're, very offensive.
Yeah, there was the thing where he told Trevor Lawrence threw a pass, and the receiver missed it, and then he went to Lawrence and saying, "You need to slow things down. He's from the South," not realizing Trevor Lawrence is from the South. He played at Clemson for Christ's sake. Just showed how clueless and unprepared he was. But yeah, that's the terrifying thought, is that he couldn't get away with it at the NFL level. It's pretty obvious he did at the college level.
Remember when the NFL Network used to do that series of shows, the top 10, top 10 blowout losses, top 10 whatever.
Right.
Okay, they had a million of those shows.
Yeah.
One of the shows they did was top 10 worst coaches who coached in the NFL who coached in college. You'd have to redo that show now.
Yeah.
Because Meyer would have to be at least
at the
one.
top.
I think number one. I want to say number one was Nick Saban, but I'm not sure. Or maybe it was Lou Holtz.
I would have said it could have been Holtz, Petrino, Saban. It's now Urban Meyer just because of the money involved and the players involved.
I think it was Petrino actually was number one.
Right.
But you'd have to put Meyer way up to the top now. Yeah. This guy was how they let him. I want to get into it, but I did call it. But it was worse than this is way worse than I thought.
Yeah,
I thought it was going to blow up in their face more because I just didn't think he was going to succeed. I didn't think it was going to blow up in their face because of the kind of person he was.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew we had an inkling of that when he was in college, but I thought that his downfall would be just because he couldn't win in the league, not that he would create such a toxic environment that it would have people scurrying away every time he entered the room. I didn't think it was going to be that bad.
Yeah, that's funny because Steve Spurrier failed because he just wanted to play golf.
It was all about
Urban Meyer failed because he was a horrible human being.
It was all about Steve Spurrier and that's whatever. Lou Holtz failed because he just was out of his element. And
most of these guys
wasn't anything sinister
about
that.
The level of their incompetence. You're right.
There wasn't anything sinister about Lou Holtz coaching in the NFL. This guy is evil. I mean, he's just downright evil.
Yeah. Well, you could say, though, Petrino, the way he left Atlanta was lawless, to say the very least.
Yeah, of course.
He essentially pulled an Irsay leaving Baltimore to Cleveland to kind of thing. Yeah. Indianapolis. Yeah, exactly. So, but I hope we don't have to talk about Urban Meyer ever again. I'm afraid we probbly will, but I sure hope not. Yeah. All right, Greg.
I don't want to see him in a TV studio.
Yep.
I don't want to see him in a broadcast booth.
Yep.
I don't want to see him anywhere near anyone. Frankly, I mean, This guy is unbelievable. Unbelievable.
All right, why don't you get out the thank yous and maybe remind everybody who we have coming up as guests over the next couple of shows.
Very good. I will do that. Follow me on Twitter at Greg Eno. Follow the Knee Jerks at the Knee Jerks. Read me in my WordPress Out of Bounds blog every week. Just Google Out of Bounds Greg Eno and you should find it. Or I'm also posting my links all the time on Twitter, so you can find me there. And as Al mentioned, we have on April the 5th, 2 weeks from tonight, Matt Derry, a longtime Detroit sports radio guy and podcaster now, will join us. And then on April 19th, if you love the NFL draft, you'll love Mike Shoddy. He's going to come and talk to us about everything in upwards, backwards, forwards, about the draft. He'll do that on the 19th of April, right in that sweet spot just before the draft. And so stay tuned for that. So we're excited.
Yep.
I want to thank my holy wife Sharon for putting up with this stuff, and thank you, Big Al, for making Tuesday night so gosh darn fun.
And you forgot to thank Bean, unfortunately. He was quiet again.
Well, I locked myself in the room. So.
All right. Thank you, Greg, for taking time out of your very busy schedule, and thank you for not breaking your neck over these past couple weeks. You came damn close. I saw the scars. Give a shout out to Linda, who is home chilling after working 4 12s in a row in the ER. As always, you can find it all the usual places where you find podcasts. Now, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Play, Amazon Music, Deezer, Radio Public. TheKneeJerks.net is the homepage where you can find all the show notes, any links to social media, links to any articles we talked about. And, of course, you can also just directly download the podcast from TheKneeJerks.net as well. Anywhere podcasts are aggravated, you can find the show. Just search The Knee Jerks, Eno and Big Al, some combination thereof. And please like, share, subscribe, as they say, and bang that bell or hit that notification button, whatever you want to call it. I think it's time to call it a night. So until we have Matt the Diesel Derry on our next show to talk about all things Detroit sports, and we'll talk about all things Detroit sports. This is Al Beaton saying good evening, good luck, and aloha.
Ciao, Roy. We'll see you in 2 weeks.